Okay, Acers, listen up. I heard that Crazy Eddie is going to make the drop at midnight. So talk! Tell me what you know. Well, that's kind of one way it could start, or any other number of ways. But what we're talking about today is networking in Savage Worlds. Now, networking means that sometimes your characters have to spend some time hitting the streets and stomping around. And networking is one of those things that came into Savage Worlds Suede Edition from from Deadlands Noir. Now, I did a video talking about Deadlands Noir and about Suede earlier and things like that, and the way that I applaud that I applaud the work that Pinnacle does in incorporating other editions and things that are good from other settings into the main core rulebook. And networking was one of those things. So this one, even though I might be repeating some information I've already given, I'm going to specifically focus in on networking so there can be a video just about networking. And networking gives, it's kind of a, I mean, you could spend hours role-playing those interactions, and they're fun. But if you're wanting to skip ahead and get straight to the action, but you need to see about getting the information that you're after, sometimes you need to just do a networking role. And this also fills in for the fact that sometimes your characters know where to look for the information that they're getting from people. And sometimes you as a player might not know. So as a game master, this is something that you would need to know to be able to get the characters through to your next clue, or give them a clue that they need to have. So, and one thing that I will put here is if you're doing a mystery, which, let's face it, most any kind of story that you run is a mystery, just reskinned for the world that you're running it on. If you're running a mystery, one, do not try and outsmart your players. Two, do not try to be more clever and do something nifty and neato and have like this thread and this thread tied together and going up to this thread and it all loops around and it comes down to this thread. And don't try and make it too complex. Make it as simple as possible. Somebody did something and the player characters have been hired to figure out what's going on. Or somebody's doing something and the player characters happen to get involved. There's multiple ways you can do a mystery, and I've covered some of those things in the previous edition talking about Deadlands Noir because ultimately that's one of the best mystery generators I've ever seen. But what I want to convey to you here is that that when you're running a mystery of any kind and you want your characters and your players to connect the dots between two different points and just to connect them all the way along, that you are going to be best served if you give them at least one clue that gets them there. And then the other clues they can get through notice rolls and through searching things and telling you what they're searching, and ultimately what the networking roles reveal to them. As the light from my screens was washing out my face, I decided I'd go ahead and just bring it back on here. So let me just read the quote directly from the book. Well, actually, first of all, before I read this quote, remember that there are two ways of networking, two ways of getting information from people. If you're not being a spy and following them around and things like that. But there are two ways of getting information. And those are persuasion, which is the nice way of doing things, and intimidation, which is the mean way of doing things. And different kinds of societies call for different roles sometimes. The high society or nice society, polite society, will be definitely more persuasion. The rough society, the seedier elements of the streets, those kind of things, those will be intimidation. And so, to quote from the book here, when to use these rules. Networking is a good way for characters to spend their time while bookworm types are doing research. Or for social characters to spend their time. I missed that word social in there. So for social characters to spend their time while bookworm types are doing research. The basics are like this. Characters use their persuasion or intimidation to gather favors or information. As always, the GM should apply any bonuses or penalties appropriate to the situation. So when you persuade, that's going out and schmoozing and socializing, and each of these roles represents several hours of work, not just a quick "Hi, how's it going?" No, I mean contacts could be a influential edge to have here, and that would mean that you'd know Jimmy the Rat down at the corner, and Jimmy can give you the what for on things like that. And so that's one of the things to consider. But persuasion is usually hobnobbing, carousing, drinks, gifts, bribes. So maybe one of the penalties is that the character who's doing the persuasion is going to have to lose a little bit of money to represent the bribes and stuff, the dinners, evening of dinners and drinks kind of things. It might represent time in an office or a series of meetings with important people, and just ways of persuading people to part with the information they're holding. Now, I believe that there should also be another way to get that same information in your story, because, like, an article that I haven't even read the whole thing of from the Alexandrian, I got his book up on the shelf actually, but one of the things he points out is that you want to have there's a 3-clue rule. The first clue is readily available. The second clue is usually a little harder to find. And the third clue is even a little harder to find than that. However, you also want to make sure that there are 3 different things pointing to the same place you want your characters to go, so they really get the hint. So if during a persuasion attempt, the characters critically fail and they lose access to that particular group for a while, then they have to find that information another way. What I recommend is that, like, okay, let me give you an example of the 3-clue rule in action. You're investigating the dead guy's bedroom. In the dead guy's bedroom, you find a matchbook to the Pony nightclub. You find a hat check ticket, unclaimed, to the Pony nightclub. And you find a torn out review of the latest dance review being performed at the Pony nightclub. 2 of those clues could be ones that they have to roll notice rolls to find. One of those clues, give them for free. Just say you walk into the room and there on the dead man's nightstand, you find a matchbook to the Pony nightclub. So these are ways of giving those clues. Now, when you're involving persuasion in the mix, when you're involving a networking role, you're going to still have the player roll persuasion, but they're going to roll persuasion, and they might get a 4th clue there. They might get, I heard Big Jim was talking about going down to the Pony nightclub. Said he was really sweet on a girl down there. Never told me which one, but one of those dancers in that new review probably. So that's a good way of giving a lot of the information that they found in the 3 clues as a 4th clue. And it could replace one of them, or one of the clues could replace that if the failure happens. Remember, we roll dice in a role-playing game when we find failure interesting. So heroes can use a little bit of lolly, a little bit of dough, a little bit of greenbacks, some money to add a little bit to their networking attempts. Now, this is always funny when you got poverty as a setting rule, and that just means that it's gonna really hurt, and they're gonna be at like half funds for a good week or 2. So that's what it has to represent. It has to represent something that actually makes it hurt. But it can give up to a +2 to their networking attempt. Now, The not so nice way is intimidation. That's okay. We still have the same three clues, but this time, instead of talking to the street vendor who knew Big Jim, and Big Jim said he was going down to the pony club because he was sweet on one of the girls, we're going to find out what was going on with one of those girls, with the girl that he was sweet on. We'll call her Delilah. And so maybe you found through your investigations that Delilah has been dancing down at the pony club, and something seems a little bit hinky about her. So you go and you're gonna rough some people up. You're gonna work the streets. Still takes several hours, but they're more of threats and general unpleasantness, rousting local populace, doing whatever the hero needs. So a regular success on either one will give most of what you need. A success with a raise gives it better, and failure, instead of being ostracized and losing or maybe getting some bad information, critical failure means that you got to give the player a level of bumps and bruises, and it'll take them a day that they can to recover from it. Now, bruiser can also bust heads. They can go around and be like, boom, slamming guys' heads on tables and be like, cut the crap. I know Delilah wasn't playing it straight. What you got on her? Okay, man, okay. Delilah, she's been seeing Cornwall Toner downtown. She'd been his girl for years. What's she doing it? So basically you could get that going, that kind of a conversation going. If they fail on busting heads, just simple bumps and bruises. But a critical failure, let's quote from the book here again, bears more serious consequences. The GM might break the action down to an actual encounter, which might be an ambush. The character might run afoul of the law, come back with 2 levels of fatigue from bumps and bruises, or her questions might trigger a deadly reaction from a more powerful enemy. So, hey, maybe they get the information they want. They fail forward, but now they are definitely in the grip. They're being chased. They've added the wanted hindrance or the hunted hindrance. So that's how networking works. And that's what networking is all about. Now, one more rule set that I'm going to cover real quick here before I go back up and continue celebrating St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you. If you care or not, it's still fun. Every year we watch 2 movies. We watch Darby O'Gill and the Little People and The Quiet Man. So a couple of good feel like Irish and actual Irish movies. So one more thing I want to cover in this episode are quick encounters. This is one of the best rules for me in Savage Worlds. Sometimes you might want to sum up the encounter rather than track every action round by round. And they give a good collaborative storytelling and allow you to narrate your way out of the rest of the story. I'll quote again here from the book. When to use these rules. Use quick encounters when you're pressed for time, the group isn't as interested in tactical fights, or they do something the GM wasn't prepared for, like infiltrating a large complex that you haven't detailed yet. So, this is how I run them. Everybody makes a skill roll based on the type of the encounter, their goal, what skill they think best applies on their list to that situation. Now, usually I will try and help them, especially if I'm like in a con game or something, I will try and help the players to pick a skill that's their best skill and help them creatively think of ways they could apply that to the scenario. So there's no action card. Everybody just goes in turn. And you can, the book gives some good examples of skills that can be used for the type of encounter. Like if it's a If it's a chase, you can use common knowledge for navigation, driving, repair, shooting. But I like to let the players create, and I'll reward them with a Benny. So that way they can re-roll that roll. But you can also give modifiers based on the situation, and if the heroes greatly outnumber their opposition or things like that, there can be 1 to 4 points of modifier of bonus given, but there can also be 1 to 4 points of penalties. And quick encounters also basically everybody's essentially on Joker, but you don't get the +2 of the Joker. But quick encounters can also basically be used to resolve all kinds of actions. I end up having to use it because, unfortunately, obviously, you've been on my channel long enough. You know I can get a little long-winded, and sometimes I get lost. And so because of that, I recommend using a quick encounter to wrap up a story. And I've had to do that. At this last con, for example, I had to do it on almost every one of them. But if the critical task is failed, GM decides if it stops the encounter or simply complicates it. And that can happen if you're doing it for a critical task in the encounter. You can also do staged encounters. So, whereas quick encounter usually is a single die roll, followed by some narration between the GM and players, some encounters might need additional rounds to better reflect the results of the new information or events that come to light. So you can run a couple quick encounters in a row. You can, when you look at your encounter results, if it's a dangerous encounter, give a wound or D4 wounds on a critical failure. Non-lethal encounters, it can result in everything from bumps and bruises to social stigmas, losses, or broken piece of vital equipment. The narration is how you actually get out of it. The more dynamic the situation, such as combat, assume the group wins if there's at least as many total successes as there are player characters. They can get information out there. You can get information off your foes, and support rolls do not count as successes. And if there are a few successes in player characters, they fail. And that's specifically up to the game master. And when you are gauging ammo and power points, the player and GM just kind of decide what resources have been used in that encounter. So those are the basic rules. Quick encounters are quick, easy, and just kind of simple to do. So that's what I wanted to share with you about networking and quick encounters. The next 1 or 2 videos even is going to involve setting rules. And setting rules can get kind of detailed, kind of hairy, but there's some fun tweaks you can do to your Savage World system that will bring it up or down as to the feeling that you're trying to get out of the game. Because as with converting anything to Savage Worlds or trying to bring characters in from other systems and things like that, just remember, it's the feel you're after. And that's where setting rules really will make a difference. So let's get ready for setting rules on the next rules video that I do. And that might be next time, and that might be maybe the time after. But I think that you guys have been a great audience. Remember that I do love you. You are amazing. And the world is a better place because you're in it. So I hope to see you at my table.